You know, at 68 years old, I thought life couldn't surprise me anymore. I had lived a long life, raised 2 children, given them everything. My love, my time, my health, my last dime for their education. And I always believed that family was the most precious thing a person could have. But life prepared a cruel lesson for me, one that overturned all my notions about loved ones. I was always a simple working man, an engineer at a factory, 40 years at the machine, shift work, holiday bonuses, a modest salary. But I had my fortress, a 3-bedroom apartment in the city centre, inherited from my parents. The very one where my children grew up, where the best years of our family passed. My wife Elizabeth died young, from cancer. The last 5 years before retirement, I raised the children alone, my son Joshua and my daughter Emily. I saw them off to college, helped with the grandchildren, saved every penny so they would have the best of everything. I dreamed that in retirement I would sit with my grandchildren, walk in the park, read the books I had always put off for later. That the children would come to visit, we would drink tea at the big table and reminisce about our younger years. But fate had other plans. I remember how in the fall, Joshua suggested I sign a power of attorney in his name. "Dad," he said, "it's hard for you to run around to different offices. Let me help with the utilities, the taxes." I agreed. Who doubts their own son? Emily also started visiting more often, always with some papers for me to sign. "Dad, it's a formality for the bank. Dad, it's for updating documents." I believed them. I believed them just as I had when they were little, and I was teaching them to cross the street. And then this Ethan appeared. Emily met him at some investor courses. Tall, businesslike, always in an expensive suit. He immediately started whispering things to my children, looking at my apartment with such greedy eyes. One day, I accidentally overheard their conversation in the kitchen. Ethan was saying something about neighborhood renovation, about rapidly rising real estate prices. Joshua was answering something incoherent, and Emily was silent. I felt uneasy, but I thought, it must be my imagination. How wrong I was. On the day I turned 69, the children came with a surprise. "Dad, we know you're suffering from loneliness. We found a wonderful retirement home outside the city. Let's go take a look." I refused at first. Why would I need a retirement home? I have my own home, my workshop, my friends. But they insisted so much. They were so persuasive that it was just for a look. We drove in the same car I used to take them to school in, only now they sat in the front seats, and I was in the back, like a child. Sunset Gardens. That was the name of the nursing home. Nice grounds, flower beds, but behind this facade hid something terrifying. Elderly people with empty eyes wandering the corridors, the smell of a hospital mixed with the aroma of food. I felt sick. "Kids, I want to go home," I whispered. But they were already talking to the administrator, signing something. "Dad," Joshua said, turning to me, "you'll be better off here. You'll have new friends, care, and we'll visit more often." I couldn't believe my ears. "What visits?" "I want to go home." It was then that Emily pulled out from her bag those papers I had been signing for the last few months. "Dad, you gave us the right to make such decisions yourself." "It's the power of attorney. And we've already found a buyer for the apartment. Ethan offered a great price." I felt ice cold inside. I looked bewildered at my children, so familiar and yet such strangers at the same time. They had traded me for money, just took me and traded me like old furniture. They settled me in a room with 2 other residents, gave me my suitcase with my things, and they left. Didn't even look back. The first night, I didn't sleep. I looked out the window at the moon and thought, how did this happen? Where did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? And in the morning, the hardest part began. Life in the nursing home. Life among strangers, on a schedule, without the right to your own opinion, without the right to personal space. But it was there, at the bottom of despair, that I met the person who would change everything. 2 months of my imprisonment passed. That's what I called life at Sunset Gardens. The days were identical, like twins. Wake up at 6, medication, breakfast, 1 hour of walking under supervision, lunch, silence until evening. I began to lose the will to live. Even books, which had always been my friends, ceased to interest me. I just lay there and stared at the ceiling, remembering how I used to play with my grandchildren in my apartment, the smell of coffee Elizabeth brewed on Sundays. Everything changed one Saturday morning when a young man entered our room. He didn't look like medical staff. Jeans, a simple shirt, a smile that came from the heart. "Good morning. I'm Michael, a volunteer. I brought you some new books," he said, laying out several volumes on the table. The other residents didn't pay attention, but I noticed something special in his gaze. Genuine interest, not the fake concern we were fed every day. We got to talking. It turned out Michael was a law student, dreaming of specializing in protecting the rights of the elderly. He came to the nursing home every Saturday, but none of the administration knew about his legal education. He introduced himself simply as a volunteer. "You know, Mr. Robert," he said to me once, "the worst thing is when children use their parents' trust against them." These words struck me. No one had ever spoken so directly before. No one had called things by their proper names. One day, I couldn't take it anymore and told Michael my whole story, about the apartment, the power of attorney, about Ethan, about how my own children had tricked me into coming to this place. Michael listened attentively, without interrupting. When I finished, his face became serious. "Mr. Robert, what they did isn't just immoral. They broke the law. But," he sighed, "the power of attorney complicates things, especially if you signed it voluntarily." I felt hope fading. But then Michael added, "But there is one way. We can challenge the power of attorney if we prove it was obtained by deception. And while the lawsuit is ongoing, you can do with the apartment what you see fit." "What do you mean?" I asked. "You can execute a deed of gift to another person, to someone you trust. This will halt the sale, and your children will have to challenge not the power of attorney, but the gift deed. That's much more difficult." I looked at Michael for a long time. This young man, whom I had known only a few weeks, showed more care for me than my own children. "And who should I make the deed of gift to?" I asked. "I have no one else." Michael was silent for a moment, then said, "I can't advise you on that. It has to be your decision. But if you decide to, I'll help with the legal paperwork. For free, of course." That night, I didn't sleep. All my principles, all my faith in family, it had all been shattered by the greed of my own children. But it was then that I remembered Elizabeth's words, which she said before she died. "Robert, sometimes family is created not by blood ties, but by shared values." By morning, I had made my decision. The following week, Michael and I began the operation to save my apartment. Everything had to be done in secret from the nursing home administration. Michael brought a laptop with mobile internet. We found a mobile notary who agreed to come to the nursing home under the guise of being my relative. I remember how the notary, Ms. Jennifer, looked at me with sadness as I signed the deed of gift in Michael's name. "Are you sure, Mr. Robert?" she asked. "Yes," I replied firmly. "I've never been more sure." When the documents were signed, Michael took my hand. "Mr. Robert, I don't want your apartment. Let's do this. We'll transfer it to a charitable foundation that will help seniors who find themselves in difficult situations." This proposal amazed me even more. Michael didn't want anything for himself. He truly was different. But the most interesting part began a week later, when Joshua, Emily, and Ethan unexpectedly showed up at Sunset Gardens. They burst into my room without warning. Joshua's face was contorted with anger. "Dad, what have you done?" He threw a folder of documents on the bed. "You signed the apartment over to some volunteer?" Emily stood silently, but from her pale face I understood. They already knew. "Yes," I replied calmly. "I signed it over to a person who showed me more respect than my own children." Ethan stepped forward. "Mr. Robert, you don't understand who you're dealing with. We will challenge this deed of gift in court. We'll prove you were not in your right mind." It was at that moment that Michael appeared in the room. He stood in the doorway, calm and confident. "I wouldn't advise you to make threats, Mr. Ethan," he said. "After all, illegal obtaining of a power of attorney, attempted illegal seizure of property, these are criminal charges. By the way, I've already filed an inquiry with the Financial Commission regarding your activities." For the first time, I saw Ethan lose his confidence. He turned white as a sheet. "Who are you?" he hissed. "Michael Rodriguez, law student. And now, the owner of Mr. Roberts' apartment. Or more precisely, the representative of the charitable foundation to which the apartment now belongs." Joshua looked at me with such indignation, as if I had committed a crime. "Dad, how could you? We're your family." Those words were the last straw. I got up from the bed, for the first time in 2 months feeling not like a victim, but like a force to be reckoned with. "Family doesn't abandon their own in a time of need, Joshua. Family doesn't deceive for money. You ceased to be my family the day you brought me here under the guise of a tour." They left without another word. But I knew this wasn't the end. The trial began a month later. My children filed a lawsuit to have the deed of gift declared invalid, claiming I was incapable of understanding my actions. The courtroom was full. On one side, my children with expensive lawyers paid for by Ethan. On the other, Michael and I with our lawyer, Ms. Allison, who agreed to take the case pro bono. Joshua, giving his testimony, talked about my memory problems, about how I didn't always comprehend reality. Emily cried, telling how she worried about my health. But when it was my turn, I spoke calmly and clearly. I told the judge how they had tricked me into the nursing home, how I found out about the apartment sale from the administrator who accidentally mentioned it. Then Michael presented the evidence, an audio recording I had secretly made during their visit, where Ethan could be heard threatening to challenge the deed of gift. A recording where I clearly and lucidly state my intentions. Judge Vanessa listened carefully. When she addressed my children, her voice was cold. "Mr. Joshua, Miss Emily, you claim your father was incapable of understanding his actions, but this recording suggests otherwise. Moreover, you had a notarized document where Mr. Robert clearly expresses his will." The court ruled in our favor. The deed of gift was declared valid. But the most important part was yet to come. 3 months after the trial, the former apartment was transformed into the Robert Senior Legal Aid Center for Pensioners. Michael and I renovated the premises. Instead of the old carpet, modern linoleum appeared. The walls were painted in light colors. The living room was equipped as a conference hall. The former bedrooms became offices for volunteer lawyers. The center's first client was Mr. Charles, a 72-year-old pensioner whose children were trying to evict him from his own apartment through the courts. Michael and the other volunteers helped him win his case. Then came Mrs. Patricia, whose grandson had gambled away her home. We found ways to cancel the illegal transaction. Every day I saw how my former apartment, where Elizabeth's baking once scented the air and children's laughter could be heard, was now filled with new meaning. Hope, justice, rebirth. I became the center's co-director. My engineering knowledge found application. I repaired computers, set up equipment, helped create a client database. Sometimes in the evening, when everyone had left, I stayed in the former living room, looked at the city through the window, and thought how strangely fate had unfolded. I lost my family, but found a purpose. I lost my children, but found true friends. "Dad," she uttered when I approached. "Can we talk?" We sat in my office, the former children's room where Emily used to sleep. "I left Ethan," she began. "He deceived me too. It turned out he owed a lot of money, and our apartment is already mortgaged. He used Joshua and me. She told me how Ethan had manipulated them, promising wealth, how he gradually distanced them from me. "I know it's too late to apologize," she said, tears in her eyes. "But I want you to know, I love you, Dad. And I regret everything." I looked at my daughter, a grown woman with a face tired from life, and I saw in her the little girl I once taught to ride a bicycle. "Emily," I said softly, "I will always be your father. But trust must be earned. Start small. Come here, help out. Show me you've really changed." She nodded, unable to speak. Today our center is 1 year old. We have already helped 87 seniors protect their rights. Michael graduated from university and now works with us as a full-time lawyer. Emily did start coming to the center. At first, she just brought coffee, then she helped with documents. She even brought her new boyfriend, a music teacher, a good-natured man named David. Joshua hasn't come yet, but I know the paths to healing are different. I believe that one day he, too, will find his way back. Tonight, we have a celebration. The center's birthday. Everyone we've helped came. The volunteers, friends. Mr. Charles brought a homemade pie. Mrs. Patricia. An album with photos of our victories. When everyone gathered in the former living room, I went to the window and looked at the city. "Elizabeth," I thought, "you would be proud of this place. A heart beats here. Hopes grow here." Michael came up to me. "Mr. Robert, are you ready to cut the cake?" I looked at him, this young man who had become closer to me than my own children. "Yes, Michael. Let's cut it. But first, I want to say a few words." I addressed everyone present. Once I thought my life was over. But it turned out it had just begun again, in a different place and with different people. Family isn't just about blood. It's those who care for you, those who help you in a time of need, those who believe in you. Silence fell in the room. And then, applause that didn't stop for several minutes. Now, as I write these lines, the sun is setting outside my office window. I know that tomorrow new clients will come to us, with their problems, their hopes. Sometimes I dream of Elizabeth. In my dreams, she is young and beautiful, just like on our wedding day. And she smiles, looking at what has become of our home. I don't know what awaits me ahead, but I know I am not alone. I have a real family. I have a purpose that matters. I have a life worth living. The former apartment where our family once lived has now become a home for many. And in that, there is a beautiful, though painful, truth. Life doesn't always turn out the way we plan, but sometimes it turns out exactly the way it's meant to be. Music slowly fades out, leaving a feeling of hope. Did this story inspire you? Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new stories about how good always triumphs. Write in the comments, Have you encountered similar situations? Your experience could help others find a way out. And remember, it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to find your true family.